The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They got their answer in the year 2298, when the first alien signal reached Earth. It was not a greeting. It was a demand for surrender. That was 49 years ago. Since then, humanity learned a terrible truth about the universe. The galaxy was not empty. It was full of predators. Empires rose and fell across the stars, and the strong devoured the weak. Earth watched and learned. Earth prepared now, in the year 2347. Admiral Doan stood on the bridge of the flagship Aegis and stared at the holographic display before him. 3,000 red dots moved slowly toward the center of the map. Each dot was an enemy warship. Together, they formed the largest invasion fleet ever recorded in human history. The Velter Dominion had come to claim Earth. "Admiral," said Captain Sora from her station. Her voice was calm, but her hands gripped the console tightly. "The enemy fleet has entered the outer boundary of the Sol system. They will reach Earth's orbit in 16 hours. Doan nodded slowly. He was an old man now, with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Every decision, every sacrifice, every sleepless night had led to this single point in time. "Have they responded to our initial contact?" he asked. "No, sir. They are ignoring all communication attempts." Doan had expected this. The Velter did not negotiate with species they considered inferior, and to them, every species was inferior. Their empire spanned over 200 conquered worlds. They had crushed civilizations far older and more advanced than humanity appeared to be. To the Velter, Earth was just another planet to harvest. But the Velter did not know the truth. It's about Earth. No one did. The door to the bridge opened, and a woman in a white coat entered. Dr. Hannah walked with purpose, her tablet clutched to her chest. She was the lead scientist of Project Eclipse, the most classified program in human history. Only a handful of people knew what Eclipse truly was. Even fewer understood what it could do. "Admiral," she said, stopping beside him. "All systems are ready. Project Eclipse is fully operational." Doan looked at her. "You are certain?" "I have tested it 1,000 times. It will work." She paused. "The question is whether we will need to use it." "We will," Doan said quietly. "They will not turn back. They never do." On the other side of the solar system, aboard the Velter flagship Conqueror's Dawn, High Commander Roth reviewed the data on the planet called Earth. He sat on his command throne, a massive seat made from the bones of a conquered species. Around him, his officers worked in silence, afraid to disturb their leader. Roth was not impressed by what he saw. Earth was a small world with a single moon. Its people had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. Their military fleet numbered less than 500 ships. Against his 3,000 warships, they would fall in hours. "A pathetic species," he said to Elder Talus, who stood beside the throne. "They barely qualify as prey." Talus nodded. He was ancient, even by Velter standards, his skin wrinkled and gray. He had witnessed the conquest of 60 worlds in his lifetime. "They are young, High Commander." "Young and foolish. They will learn the natural order of the galaxy soon enough." Sub-Commander Kale approached the throne and bowed. He was younger than the others, and something troubled him. "High Commander, we have received a transmission from Earth." Roth raised an eyebrow. "They wish to surrender already?" "No, sir. It is a warning." Roth laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge, and his officers joined nervously. "A warning?" "The prey threatens the hunter." "Play it. I want to hear this." Kale pressed a button on his console. A human voice filled the bridge. It belonged to Lieutenant Wu Jin, communications officer of Earth's defense fleet. "Attention, Velter fleet. This is the United Earth Defense Command. You are entering restricted space. Turn back immediately. This is your only warning. If you proceed past the Mars boundary, there will be no negotiation, no surrender, no prisoners, no retreat. You will not survive." This message will not repeat. Silence followed the transmission. Then Roth began to laugh again, louder this time. No prisoners? No retreat? He slammed his fist on the armrest. These humans have courage. I will give them that. It is almost a shame to destroy them. Elder Talus smiled. Courage without strength is just noise, High Commander. They are bluffing. They have nothing that can stop us. But Sub-Commander Kale did not laugh. He stared at the data on his screen, and a cold feeling grew in his stomach. Something was wrong. The human message had not sounded like a bluff. There was no fear in the voice. No desperation. It sounded like a formality. Like they had already accepted what was coming. Like they had already won. High Commander Kale said carefully, perhaps we should send scouts first. Learn more about their defenses before committing the full fleet. His eyes narrowed. Are you afraid, Sub-Commander? I am cautious, sir. The humans seemed confident. They are fools, Roth snapped. Their confidence comes from ignorance. They have never faced a true power. They do not understand what is coming for them. He stood from his throne and addressed the entire bridge. All ships will proceed as planned. We will reach Earth in 16 hours. By tomorrow, their world will belong to the Dominion. The bridge officers cheered. Kale remained silent. Back on the Aegis, Admiral Doan watched the red dots continue their approach. The warning had been sent. The choice had been made. There was nothing more to say. Captain Sora stepped closer to him. Do you think any of them will turn back, sir? Doan shook his head slowly. No, they are too proud, too certain of their power. He turned away from the display and walked toward the window. Outside, Earth hung in the darkness, blue and green and beautiful. His home, his people, everything he had sworn to protect. They had a chance, he said quietly. We gave them a choice. That is more than they have ever given anyone. Sora nodded. And now? Doan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of what was to come. Now we show them why that was a mistake. The fleet of 3,000 ships continued forward. They did not slow down. They did not turn back. They flew toward Earth with absolute confidence, certain that victory was already theirs. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Velter. Dominion had conquered its first world 8,000 years ago. It was a small planet called Varus, home to a peaceful species that had never known war. The Velter came from the stars, demanded resources. And when the Varisians refused, they burned the planet until nothing remained but ash and bone. That was the beginning. After Varus came hundreds of other worlds. Some fought back. Some surrendered. It did not matter. The result was always the same. The Velter took what they wanted and left destruction behind. They built their empire on the bodies of the fallen. They believed it would last forever. High Commander Roth had been part of this machine for over 60 years. He had led the conquest of 12 worlds personally. He knew exactly how the pattern worked. First, the weak species would make threats. Then they would try to fight. Then they would beg for mercy. And finally, they would die. Humans would be no different. Roth stood before the assembled officers of his fleet. His image broadcast to all 3,000 ships. Behind him, a holographic display showed the planet Earth growing larger as they approached. My warriors, he said, his voice carrying the confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. Before us lies our next conquest. The humans call their world Earth. They are young. They are weak. They have sent us warnings and threats, believing that words can stop what is coming. He paused for effect, letting his words sink in. They are wrong. In 12 hours, their fleets will be debris. In 24 hours, their cities will burn. In 1 week, the survivors will kneel before the Dominion and beg to serve us. This is the natural order. This is what we are. The officers cheered across all channels. 3,000 ships filled with warriors who had never tasted defeat. An armada that had crushed civilizations far greater than humanity. What chance did one small planet have against such power? On the bridge of the Conqueror's Dawn, Elder Talus approached Roth after the broadcast ended. "A fine speech, High Commander," he said. "The warriors are eager for battle." "They should be," Roth replied. "It has been too long since our last conquest. The men grow restless without blood." Talus nodded, but his eyes drifted to the tactical display. "I have studied the human data we collected. They are a curious species. They fight among themselves constantly. Wars, conflicts, endless struggle. They seem incapable of peace, and they will understand what we bring them," Roth said. "We will give them a common enemy, a purpose. They should thank us." Sub-Commander Kale entered the bridge and saluted. His face was troubled, but he tried to hide it. "High Commander, I have analyzed the human defense positions, and their fleet is holding position near Earth orbit. Approximately 400 ships, mostly small cruisers and frigates. Nothing that can match our firepower." He hesitated. "But there is something strange." Roth's eyes narrowed. "Speak." "Their defensive formation is too small, too concentrated. It is as if they are not trying to stop us at all. They are just ... waiting. Waiting to die," Roth said dismissively. "They know they cannot win. Perhaps they hope we will show mercy if they do not resist." "We do not show mercy," Talus added, with a thin smile. "No," Roth agreed. "We do not." Kale wanted to say more, but he knew it was pointless. Roth had already made his decision. The fleet would attack. Earth would fall. That was the only future the High Commander could imagine. But Kel could not shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Far away on Earth, the mood was different. Admiral Doan walked through the corridors of the orbital defense station, his boots clicking against the metal floor. Around him, officers and crew moved with calm efficiency. There was no panic, no fear, just quiet determination. He entered the central command room where General Taiho was coordinating the planetary evacuation. Taiho was a large man with broad shoulders and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He had commanded Earth's ground forces for 20 years, Admiral Taiho said, nodding in greeting. "Civilian evacuation to the underground shelters is 90% complete. The remaining population will be secured within 2 hours." "Good," Doan said. "Though I do not believe the shelters will be necessary." Taiho smiled slightly. "Neither do I, but the people need to feel safe. They need to know we are protecting them." Doan understood. The public did not know about Project Eclipse. They only knew that an alien fleet was coming to destroy them. They needed hope. They needed to believe that their leaders had a plan, and they did have a plan. They had the only plan that mattered. Dr. Hannah was waiting in the next room, surrounded by screens showing complex data streams. She had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red, her hair was messy, but her mind was sharp. Project Eclipse was her life's work. 30 years of research, development, and testing. 30 years of keeping the greatest secret in human history. "Admiral," she said without looking up from her screens, "the Velter fleet is now 8 hours from engagement range. All Eclipse systems are running at full capacity." Dohan stood beside her and looked at the data. Numbers and equations that he did not fully understand scrolled across the displays. He was a military man, not a scientist. But he trusted Hannah completely. "Explain it to me one more time," he said. In simple terms, Hannah finally looked at him. Despite her exhaustion, there was fire in her eyes. The Velter use plasma weapons, high-energy attacks designed to overwhelm shields and melt through armor. It is the standard weapon of most galactic civilizations. She pulled up a diagram. Project Eclipse creates a dimensional fold barrier around Earth. When enemy fire hits this barrier, it does not impact. It does not bounce. It is absorbed. Absorbed, Doan repeated. Yes, the energy is pulled into a dimensional pocket and stored. Every shot they fire makes us stronger. She smiled grimly. And when we have collected enough energy, we can release it. All at once, directed precisely at every ship in their fleet, using their own weapons against them. Using their own weapons amplified 1,000 times against them. Hannah's voice grew quiet. They will fire everything they have at us, and we will send it all back in a single moment. They will not have time to react. They will not have time to run. They will simply cease to exist.
How?
Doan was silent for a long moment. The power that Hannah described was terrifying. It was not just a weapon. It was extinction made manifest. A button that could erase an entire fleet from reality. Do you ever wonder if we have gone too far? He asked quietly. Hannah looked at him with tired eyes. Every day. But then I remember the colony on Titan. The settlement on Europa. The stations we lost before Eclipse was ready. Her voice hardened. 8,000 humans died because we were not prepared. Because we could not protect them. I will not let that happen again. No matter the cost. Doan placed a hand on her shoulder. Then let us hope this is the last time we ever need to use it. On the bridge of the Aegis, Captain Sora watched the countdown timer. 8 hours until contact. 8 hours until the Velter fleet learned the truth about humanity. Lieutenant Wujian approached her station. Captain, should I broadcast another warning? Sora shook her head. No, they had their chance. One warning is all anyone deserves. Wujian nodded and returned to his post. Around them, the crew of the Aegis prepared for battle. Weapons were charged. Shields were raised. Fighters were loaded into launch bays, but everyone knew the truth. The real weapon was not aboard any ship. The real weapon surrounded the entire planet. Invisible. Waiting. Hangry, 8 hours remained. The Velter fleet flew on, confident in their power. Certain of their victory, they had no idea that they were already dead. The space between. Mars and Earth had never seen so many ships. 3,000 Velter warships moved in perfect formation, their dark holes blocking out the stars behind them. They were massive vessels, each one built for destruction. Their weapons could crack mountains. Their shields could withstand nuclear fire. They were the most powerful fleet ever assembled in this part of the galaxy. Against them stood 400 human ships. Small, fragile, outnumbered. High Commander. Roth smiled as he watched the human fleet on his display. They had formed a defensive line in front of their planet, a thin wall of metal and hope. It was brave. It was foolish. It was exactly what every other species had done before they were destroyed. All ships, Roth commanded, prepare to engage. Forward elements, open fire on the human defensive line. Let them taste our power before we crush them completely. 200 Velter ships at the front of the formation powered their weapons. Plasma cores glowed with deadly energy. Targeting systems locked onto the human vessels. In seconds, enough firepower to destroy a moon was ready to launch. Fire, Roth ordered. Space lit up with streams of blue plasma. Thousands of shots raced toward the human fleet. A wave of destruction that nothing could survive. On the bridge of the Aegis, Admiral Doan watched the incoming fire calmly. Around him, officers tensed at their stations. Even knowing what was coming, the sight of so much destruction heading toward them was terrifying.
Stay steady,
Doan said quietly. Trust the system. The plasma bolts reached the space in front of the human fleet. And then, something impossible happened. They vanished. The shots did not impact. They did not explode. They simply disappeared, swallowed by empty space, as if they had never existed. The entire first wave of Velter fire was gone in an instant. On the Conqueror's dawn, silence fell across the bridge. Officers stared at their screens in confusion. Sensors showed the weapons had been fired. Sensors showed they had reached the target area, but there was no impact. No damage. Nothing. What happened? Roth demanded. Why are the humans still there? Sub-Commander Kale checked his instruments frantically. I do not understand, High Commander. Our weapons fired correctly. They should have hit. But there is no debris. No shield impact readings. The shots just stopped existing. Elder Talus leaned forward, his ancient eyes narrowing. Impossible. No technology can simply absorb plasma fire. The energy must go somewhere. Clearly it does not, Kale said, his voice shaking slightly. High Commander, I recommend we hold position and analyze what just happened before. No, Roth snarled. This is some kind of trick. A hologram. An illusion. All ships, full assault. Everything we have. Destroy them. The order went out across the fleet. 3,000 ships powered every weapon they had. This time there would be no single volley. This time they would unleash everything. A continuous stream of destruction that would last for minutes. Nothing could survive that. Nothing, Fireroth commanded again. The entire Velter armada opened fire at once. The darkness of space became bright as day. Plasma bolts, energy beams, missiles, torpedoes. Every weapon the Velter possessed screamed toward Earth, its tiny defensive fleet, and every single shot disappeared. On the Aegis, Captain Sora watched the readings with wide eyes. The dimensional fold barrier was absorbing everything. Trillions of joules of energy were being pulled into the dimensional pocket that Dr. Hannah had created. The storage capacity was filling rapidly. "Admiral," she reported, her voice filled with wonder, "they are giving us more power than we ever imagined. The barrier is at 40% capacity and rising fast." Doan nodded. "Let them continue. Let them empty their weapons." In the command center, Dr. Hannah watched the numbers climb. 50%, 60%, 70%. The Velter were firing everything they had, and every shot was feeding Project Eclipse. They were charging the very weapon that would destroy them. "They do not understand," she whispered. "They cannot understand." The barrier remained invisible, but as more and more energy poured into it, something began to change. A faint shimmer appeared in space around Earth, a lattice of light barely visible, spanning millions of kilometers. It was beautiful in a terrible way, a web of captured destruction waiting to be released. On the Conqueror's dawn, Roth watched in growing horror as his fleet's attack had no effect. His officers were panicking. Their screens showed impossible readings. Energy that went nowhere. Weapons that hit nothing. It was as if space itself was eating their fire. "What is this?" Talus breathed. His voice had lost all confidence. "What are they?" Subcommander Kale pointed at the display with a trembling hand. "Hi, Commander, look. There's a pattern. The energy is not disappearing. It is being collected. There is something around their planet. A barrier we cannot see. It is absorbing everything we throw at it." Roth stared at the faint shimmer that had appeared in space. His mind struggled to accept what he was seeing. This was not possible. No young species could develop such technology. No civilization in the galaxy had ever created anything like this. "Stop firing," he ordered suddenly. "All ships, cease fire immediately." The command went out. Slowly, the barrage stopped. The brightness faded. Space returned to darkness, but the shimmer around Earth remained, pulsing softly, waiting on the Aegis. Admiral Doan received the report from Dr. Hannah. The barrier was at 93% capacity. They had collected enough energy to destroy the Velter fleet 10 times over. It was more than enough. "They have stopped firing," Sora reported. Doan said. He stood slowly and looked at the display showing the Velter fleet. 3,000 ships frozen in space, finally understanding that they had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Lieutenant Wujin said, "They are trying to contact us. High Commander Roth is requesting communication." Doan considered this for a moment. The Velter wanted to talk now. Now that their weapons were useless, now that they had seen something they could not explain, now that fear had replaced their arrogance. "Ignore them," Doan said quietly. Wujin looked surprised. "Sir, we gave them a warning. We gave them a choice. They chose to attack. The time for talking is over." Doan turned to face his crew. His voice was heavy with the weight of what he was about to do. "We did not want this. We never wanted this. But they forced our hand. Remember that. Remember that we tried." He pressed the communication button on his chair. "Dr. Hannah." Her voice came through immediately. "Yes, Admiral. Activate Eclipse Protocol." Full response. Then Hannah spoke again, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. "Understood. Eclipse Protocol activated. Full response in 10 seconds. On the Conqueror's dawn, Subcommander Kale watched his sensors spike with readings he had never seen before. The shimmer around Earth was changing, growing brighter. The energy they had fed it was moving, reorganizing, preparing. "Hi, Commander," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Something is happening." Roth looked at the display. The lattice of light was pulsing faster now, and within it, points of intense brightness were forming. Thousands of them. Millions of them. Each one pointing at a different Velter ship. Oh, Roth breathed. He finally understood. The warning had not been a bluff. The humans had not been desperate. They had been patient. They had waited for the Velter to attack. They had let the Velter charge the weapon that would destroy them. "All ships," Roth screamed. "Retreat. Full retreat. Get us out of here!" But it was already too late. The lights around Earth flashed once, brilliant and terrible, and then the dying began. Sub-Commander Kale had served in the Velter military for 30 years. He had witnessed the destruction of worlds. He had seen stars die. He had watched civilizations burn. Nothing had prepared him for what he saw in those final seconds. The dimensional fold barrier around Earth inverted. The lattice of light that had been absorbing their weapons suddenly turned outward. Every joule of energy the Velter had fired was released in a single moment. But it was not released as simple firepower. It was directed through dimensional rifts. Tiny tiers in space that opened directly inside each Velter ship. Kale watched the vessel next to his flagship simply cease to exist. One moment it was there, a massive warship with 2,000 crew. The next moment, space folded inward, reality twisted, and the ship was gone. Not destroyed. Not exploded. Gone. As if it had never been built. Across the fleet, the same thing happened everywhere. Ships vanished in bursts of twisted light. The energy they had fired was returned to them, amplified 1,000 times, delivered directly into their cores. Shields were meaningless. Armor was meaningless. There was no defense against an attack that bypassed space itself. Kale watched his sensor display as the numbers fell. 3,000 ships became 2,000. 2,000 became 1,000. 1,000 became 500. The count dropped so fast that his mind could not process it. Ships were dying faster than he could track them, and then it was over. The entire attack lasted exactly 4.7 seconds. In less time than it took to draw a breath, the greatest armada in Velter history had been reduced to nothing. 2,847 warships erased from existence. Millions of warriors gone without a trace. The most powerful fleet ever assembled. Destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive, silence fell across the void. On the bridge of the Conqueror's Dawn, High Commander Roth stood frozen. His display showed empty space where his fleet had been. The only remaining ships were his flagship and a handful of vessels that had been at the very edge of the formation. Perhaps 150 ships total. Less than 5% of his force, and they were not unharmed. The dimensional feedback had overloaded their systems. Engines were dead. Weapons were offline. They drifted helplessly in the darkness, surrounded by nothing but the memory of their fallen comrades.
Al Roth whispered.
His voice was hollow, empty. "This cannot be. This cannot be." Elder Talus had collapsed to the floor. His ancient body trembled as he stared at nothing. His mind had broken. He had witnessed something that his 8,000 years of experience could not explain. The Velter had never lost. The Velter could not lose. And yet, they had been annihilated in seconds by a species that should have been nothing more than prey. Sub-Commander. Kale forced himself to move. His hands shook as he checked the remaining systems. Life support was functional. Communications were damaged but repairable. Engines were completely dead. They were trapped here, helpless, at the mercy of the species they had come to conquer. "Hi, Commander," he said, his voice cracking. "What do we do?" Roth did not answer. He continued to stare at the empty display, his mind unable to accept what had happened. His entire fleet. His warriors. His legacy. Gone in less than 5 seconds. Destroyed by a single pulse of light. On the Aegis, Admiral Doan watched the aftermath in silence. The battle was over. If it could even be called a battle, there had been no real fight. The Velter had attacked and the Velter had been erased. It was that simple. Captain Sora approached him slowly. Her face was pale. Even knowing what Eclipse could do, seeing it in action was something else entirely. "Admiral," she said quietly, "enemy fleet destroyed. 153 vessels remain, all disabled. The Velter flagship is among them." Doan nodded. "Casualties on our side?" "None, sir. Not a single ship was damaged." 3,000 against 400. Millions of enemy warriors against the small human defense force, and humanity had not lost a single person. It was not a victory. It was something beyond victory. It was a demonstration of absolute, overwhelming power. Lieutenant Wujan spoke from his station. "Sir, I am detecting life signs on the remaining Velter ships. They are still alive. Their systems are just disabled." "I know," Doan said. "I ordered Eclipse to leave survivors. The flagship especially." Sora looked at him with surprise. "You wanted survivors? Why?" Doan turned to face her. His eyes were tired, sad. The eyes of a man who had done something terrible because there was no other choice. "'Cause someone needs to tell the rest of the galaxy what happened here," he said. "Someone needs to warn them. Earth is not to be touched. If we kill everyone, if there are no witnesses, others will come. They will think the Velter simply disappeared. They will want to test us." Shook his head. "We need them to know. We need them to fear." He pressed the communication button. "Lieutenant Wujan, open a channel to the Velter flagship. I want to speak with their High Commander." After a moment of static, the channel opened. Roth's face appeared on the display. He looked broken. His eyes were empty. The arrogance that had defined him was gone completely. "Hi, Commander Roth," Doan said calmly. "Can you hear me?" Roth's mouth moved. It took several seconds for words to come out. "What? What are you?" Doan did not answer the question. "You were warned. You chose to ignore us. This is the result of that choice." He paused to let the words sink in. "Your fleet is gone. Your empire's greatest armada, destroyed in seconds. You have seen what we can do. Now you will carry this knowledge back to your dominion." Roth's eyes focused slowly. A spark of something returned to them. Fear. Pure, absolute fear. "You are letting us go?" "We are letting you live," Doan corrected. "There is a difference. You will return to your space. You will tell your leaders what happened here. You will tell every species in the galaxy. Earth is not to be touched. Humanity is not prey. Any fleet that approaches our system with hostile intent will suffer the same fate as yours." He leaned forward, and his voice grew cold. "This is mercy, High Commander. We could have killed every single one. Of you, we chose not to. There will not be a second chance. If another Velter ship ever enters our system, we will not leave survivors. We will not leave witnesses. We will erase your entire species from existence." Roth was trembling now. "You cannot do that. No one has that power." "We just destroyed 3,000 of your ships in less than 5 seconds, Doan said. "You still think there are limits to what we can do?" There was no response. Roth had nothing left to say. Doan ended the communication and turned away from the display. Around him, his crew was silent. They had won. Humanity had won. But there was no celebration, no cheering. Just a heavy silence that filled the bridge. Captain Sora stepped closer. "Admiral, are you all right?" Doan did not answer for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "Today we showed the galaxy that we are not weak, that we cannot be conquered, that we will not be slaves." He paused. "But we also showed them what we are capable of, what we are willing to do. The universe will fear us now. They will respect us, but they will also hate us." He looked out the window at the vast emptiness where the Velter fleet had been. "I pray we never have to use Eclipse again. But I know that prayer will not be answered. There will always be another empire, another fleet, another species that thinks they can take what is ours." He turned back to his crew. "We must be ready, always ready, because the moment we show weakness, they will come again. And next time, they will not underestimate us. Outside, the surviving Velter ships slowly powered up their emergency systems. One by one, they began the long journey back to their space. They carried with them a message that would spread across the galaxy. Earth was not to be touched, and humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. 3 months passed since the battle that changed everything. News traveled slowly across the stars, but eventually, the truth reached every corner of the galaxy. The Velter Dominion, the most feared empire in known space, had sent its greatest fleet to conquer a small world called Earth. 3,000 warships, millions of warriors. The largest invasion force ever assembled, they had been destroyed in less than 5 seconds. The surviving Velter ships had returned to their homeworld with recordings of what happened. The footage spread like wildfire. Every species with access to interstellar communication saw the moment when the Velter fleet simply vanished. One frame they were there. The next frame they were gone. No battle, no struggle, just instant, absolute annihilation. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. On the Velter homeworld, chaos erupted. High Commander Roth was executed by his own government, blamed for the greatest military disaster in their history, but his death did not solve anything. The Dominion was collapsing. For 8,000 years, their empire had been built on fear. Conquered species obeyed because they knew resistance was impossible. The Velter were too strong. Their fleets were too powerful. But now everyone knew that the Velter could be defeated. Worse than defeated, they could be erased. Rebellions broke out across the Dominion. Subjugated worlds rose up against their masters. The Velter military was spread too thin, weakened by the loss of so many ships and warriors. They could not hold their empire together. One by one, their conquered territories broke free. The Velter Dominion, the great predator of the galaxy, was dying on Earth. Admiral Doan stood before the United Earth Council and delivered his final report. The chamber was filled with the leaders of humanity. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, scientists. They listened in silence as he described what had happened and what it meant for their future. "We have won a great victory," Doan said, "but we must not allow ourselves to be blinded by it. The galaxy knows what we can do now. Some will respect us, some will fear us, and some will hate us." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We must be careful not to become what the Velter were. We have power that no species has ever possessed. The temptation to use it will be strong. Other empires will test us. Other fleets will come, and we will defend ourselves. But we must never forget why we built Project Eclipse. It was not created for conquest. It was created for protection, for survival, for peace." The council members nodded slowly. They understood the danger. Power corrupted. History had proven that over and over again. Humanity had overcome many challenges, but this might be their greatest test: to hold ultimate power and choose not to abuse it. General Taiho spoke from his seat. "Admiral, what do we do about the rest of the galaxy? Species are already sending messages. They want to talk. They want alliances. Some of them, ruled by the Velter, want our help." "We listen," Doan replied. "We talk, we help where we can. But we do not become conquerors. We do not build an empire of our own. If other species want freedom, we support them. If they want trade, we negotiate fairly. If they want war," he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. In a quiet laboratory deep beneath the surface of Earth, Dr. Hannah sat alone in the darkness. Project Eclipse was complete. Her life's work was finished. She had created the most powerful weapon in galactic history. She had watched it erase millions of lives in less than 5 seconds. She could not sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the recordings. Ships vanishing. Crew members dying. Families destroyed. It did not matter that the Velter had been invaders. It did not matter that they would have killed billions of humans if they had one. The weight of what she had done pressed down on her like a mountain. Admiral Doan found her there hours later. He sat down beside her without speaking. They stayed in silence for a long time, Keep telling myself it was necessary, Hannah finally said. They would have killed us. They would have enslaved our children. They would have burned our world. They would have, Doan agreed. But I cannot stop thinking about all the lives we ended. They were soldiers. They had families. Children waiting for them to come home. Her voice broke. I built the weapon that killed them all. How do I live with that? Doan considered her question carefully. He had asked himself the same thing many times. You live with it by making sure it was worth something, he said. Those soldiers died because their leaders chose war. Their children lost their fathers because High Commander Roth refused to turn back. We gave them every chance. We warned them. We begged them to leave. He turned to look at her. The guilt you feel is proof that you are human, that you still have a heart. Hold on to that. Because the day we stop feeling guilty about taking lives is the day we become monsters like them. Hannah wiped her eyes. What do we do now? We protect the secret. Project Eclipse stays hidden. The galaxy knows we have some kind of super weapon, but they do not know how it works. They must never know. If other species learn to build their own, the galaxy will tear itself apart. He stood and offered her his hand. We keep watching. We keep defending. And we pray that we never have to use Eclipse again. Across the galaxy, in 100 different systems, the story of Earth spread. It became legend. A young species, barely a century into space travel, had destroyed the greatest fleet ever assembled. They had weapons that could erase entire armadas in seconds. They had technology that no one understood, and they had given a warning that the galaxy would never forget. Captain Sora visited the memorial on Earth's moon. It was a simple structure, a wall of names carved into black stone. These were the humans who had died in Velter raids before Project Eclipse was ready. 8,000 people. Colonists, scientists, soldiers, men, women, and children who never had a chance. Sora placed flowers at the base of the wall. She had lost friends in those attacks. Good people who deserved better. We remember you, she whispered. We avenge you. And we promise that it will never happen again. Lieutenant Wujin was on duty when the new transmission arrived. It came from a distant star system, beyond the borders of what used to be the Velter Dominion. A new empire. A new fleet. They had heard about Earth and wanted to test the stories for themselves. Wujin read the message carefully. Then he forwarded it to Admiral Doan, with a simple question attached. Should I send the warning, sir? Doan read the report in his quarters. Another empire. Another army that thought they were unstoppable. Another group of fools who believed Earth was weak because they had shown mercy to the enabled Serva survivors. He typed his response to Wujin.
Send it.
One chance. That is all anyone gets. Wujin broadcast the warning on all frequencies. The same words that had been sent to the Velter, the same offer, the same promise. Turn back. This is your only warning. If you proceed, there will be no negotiation, no surrender, no prisoners, no retreat. You will not survive, the message ended. Wujin watched his screen, waiting for a response. In the darkness of space, the new fleet received the transmission. Their commander laughed and ordered his ships forward. He had heard the stories about Earth, but he did not believe them. The Velter had probably been weak. His warriors were stronger. His ships were better. Earth would fall to his power. He was wrong, but he would learn that soon enough. The galaxy had been given a new phrase. A new warning that passed from species to species, from world to world, from generation to generation. Never ignore humanity's warning, because Earth did not bluff. Earth did not threaten. Earth simply stated facts, and those who refused to listen paid the price. Every single time.